You're not? Okay.
You got a quiet bunch here, Dave.
I know. Good morning. I'm having a hard time with my computer here. How many do we have on? I can't even see here.
17.
17. Great. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't, I'm having some problems here. Good morning. This is Dr. Dave Nelson, and we're looking forward to having Dr. Joe Ahrens on.
Joe's here.
He's here? Dr. Ahrens, are you on?
Yes, I am. I hope you can hear me.
Now I can. Good morning. So, welcome everyone to another Health Practitioners Call. Thank you, Dr. Ahrens, for stepping in again, and look forward to some of the great information you're going to have to share with us today. One of the topics that we wanted to touch on that is plaguing America and the world is low-grade inflammation. And I wanted to have you touch a little bit of base on your on who you are. We have some new practitioners on. Just touch base on a little bit of how Emin got started. And then I like to really focus in on inflammation today. And then we'll take questions and comments.
Excellent. That's fine. So we are dealing with the product here, Emulan, that is indeed inflammation manager. We originally, when we started looking at this material about 15 years ago, we did not know we were on this path, but as it so is in many, if not most discoveries, these doorways to knowledge opened themselves to us as we went down the path. We started out trying to manage carbohydrates in mammals. We were actually looking at some of the natural plant products. It appeared that they helped people manage carbohydrates. And we did prove after several years that indeed there are polyphenolics, bioflavonoids that are necessary for mammals to manage carbohydrates.
I don't understand what this is.
So This is just like a vitamin. Just like you need calcium, you need vitamin D to help you process calcium. You need these particular bioflavonoids in order to process sugar correctly. And without that in your diet at the same time that you have sugar, your body recognizes the refined sugar as a poison. And it tries to reduce the processing of that poison. And it takes several successive steps to try to get rid of that poison. And one of that process is inflammation. As your body recognizes this poison, the sugar as a poison, it goes into an inflammatory stage, and it tries to, like it does with any toxin, it tries to dilute it, and it tries to destroy it. So here's the problem, though. You never get rid of that poison because you're constantly consuming it every day. It wasn't just a one-time thing like an attack by poison ivy, as an example. Constantly, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. The average person consumes over 200 pounds of refined sugar today. So it's a lot. Refined sugar, that much in a year. So it's a lot. And that means you're constantly under this inflammation. And it destroys your body. It destroys cells. This is the problem with inflammation. As an immediate acute response, inflammation is good and necessary. There's a reason that your body becomes inflamed, because you have expanding, diluting capillaries. And then you get warm because of the increased blood flow. And then
Somebody's got to unmute Dr. Joe.
no, I don't know how I got muted because I didn't touch the computer. But so you have, if you have this poison continually in your body as refined sugar, then you have inflammation, and eventually that leads to loss of function. This company actually was named after the physician who discovered that. His name is Galen. About 2,000 years ago, he described inflammation leading to loss of function, which then leads to a disease condition. So that was really the first half of our discovery. We discovered that sugars need to be consumed along with a vitamin-like compound in order to be managed correctly in your body. A carbohydrate manager, exactly like vitamin D assists with calcium management. But the second part was the inflammation. These compounds, in addition to managing the carbohydrates and reducing inflammation from that side, they also reduce inflammation itself. We have found out that it does this through inhibition of tumor necrosis factor alpha. When you have inflammation in your body, there's hundreds of signals, but most of them lead to the turn on transcription of tumor necrosis factor alpha. This is the kingpin. And under this tumor necrosis factor alpha, you get all your isoleucins and
Right.
our normal markers for inflammation. This is a cascade, and one begets another. And this is where C-reactive protein shows up underneath tumor necrosis factor alpha. And amazingly, this product inhibits, it does not prevent. We're not trying to prevent inflammation. We're trying to regulate and manage it so it doesn't get runaway crazy. So we do want inflammation, but we don't want continuous chronic inflammation. We want to reduce that and give your body a chance to heal itself, actually. So what we have found after we've done several tests now, clinicals, is that people don't know that they are under inflammation. And here we have many doctors in this audience, and probably most of them do not understand they are under themselves chronic low-level inflammation, and they just don't know it because your body has accepted it as normal. Just like any other condition that is an insult to the body, after a while your body will accept that as normal, like even a low level of pain, other inflammation, disease conditions, diseased liver. Your body will accept that as a normal condition and will ignore that signal after a while, and you will see that, think that's normal. Then if you remove that insult, so if you get rid of the inflammation, it feels like you woke up from a sleep. You say, I didn't know I was foggy. So low level leads to fogginess in brain, loss of clear thought in the brain, that's for certain. And because in general you're tired, both physically and emotionally. It's rare for people to get a good level of sleep. And your blood flow is restricted. Your capillaries or vessels, they're not in a flexible condition that they should be in normally. And then also transmission of the nerve impulse across synapses in your extremities as well as in your brain. That is sluggish, and it's slowed down because of a loss of the signal that's there. So these are all symptoms, or I would call them the actual results of inflammation, which the body is just trying to slowly shut itself a little down because it cannot handle this inflammatory overload. And I'll give you an example going back to sugar metabolism. I want to first start by saying why would the body think that sugar is a poison? Anyhow, it's just a food. Well, it is a food, but you know, sugar, glucose, is much more than just a food. It's a structural item in plants. Cellulose, that's just chains of sugar, and that's what wood is made out of. It's structure function. It also is food, glucose. It's also storage of food, starch. And it's also a poison. In nature, poisons are often made out of sugar. They're glycosides, which means sugar on the side. You could think of it like that. It's a chemical that are made out of glucose is stuck together in a linear chain on the side, and they're sweet. And there's many alcohols that are just like sugar, and they're sweet. I mean, everyone knows about coolant, you know, radiator fluid. It'll kill a dog in a heartbeat. It's glycol. It's very sweet. It's a sugar alcohol, and it's deadly. And the number one selling plant poison in the world is Roundup, and it's a poison. It's a sugar. So you take this sugar in your body. Well, what in the world is a body? How does a body know that that's a sugar? Because it's accompanied in nature with this sugar chaperone. And I can lead you to any plant on the planet that has sugar in it. It will have a sugar chaperone. So we've moved past that. We know that sugar chaperones are with sugar in nature. It doesn't matter if it's sugar cane or the sugar in an orange or even coffee bean, which we don't recognize as very sugary or sweet. It still is loaded with carbs. They're not particularly sweet to us, but it's a berry. Coffee is a berry, and it's loaded with carbs, and it comes with sugar chaperones and all the peaches and the pineapples. Now, they're most prevalent in tropical products, and those actually happen to be the ones that have the most sugar in them. So sugar chaperone, you take the sugar, you've got sugar chaperone, the sugar is processed properly, it's kept out of fat tissue, it's shunted into brain tissue, and and that's great. And there is very little inflammation. So your body now, think about that. Your body receives this poison, and the first thing it does when it says, well, this is a poison, is it tries to put that sugar poison into fat tissue. Not because it is excess energy, but because it's a poison, and it's just quarantine it, just like putting a heavy metal in the fat tissue. It's sticking it in the fat tissue primarily because that first pass it recognizes as a poison. After a while, if the poison continues to show up, continues to be in the diet, it's not able to get rid of it. The body will then try to stop processing it altogether, and it will reduce insulin sensitivity. In other words, we don't even want that sugar in our body. Forget it. So let's just reduce insulin sensitivity. Well, that didn't help either, because the sugar's still coming into the body. We're still consuming it. Years and years, still consuming it. And then the other thing, then finally the body just, so well, I'll tell you what, let's completely eliminate the production of insulin. And what you have right there are the classic descriptions of diabetes.
Yeah, right.
This is it's about inflammation. Diabetes is about inflammation. Because let's look now what happens in the classic juvenile diabetes, onset diabetes. You have a fetus developing in the womb, and it's under constant attack, insult by poison. The mother consumes refined carbohydrates in excess, and we bathing that developing tissue, which, as all of you know, rapidly dividing tissue.
Yep.
Is very sensitive to any environmental changes. And more cells that are more mature, they have less, they're able to withstand attack better. Rapidly changing cells, especially we're going here from stem cells into mature differentiated cells. This is an opportunity for, unfortunately, negative changes. So you're bathing this tissue, rapidly dividing tissue, with poison. And the body, that little body, goes into acute inflammation. And in this short time span of this rapidly dividing cells, in order to avoid processing that poison, it kills its own pancreas cells. And so it stops making insulin because it's had these 9 months, if you think about that, to try to get rid of this poison, and it can't do it. So it goes into an autoimmune response, right, and destroys its own beta cells, and then you're out of insulin, and you're born a type 1 diabetic. This is what we believe is the root cause of type 1 diabetes, that constant exposure to a poison by the fetus. Inflammation, it's all about inflammation. Okay, if you were lucky to escape type 1 diabetes, then you go into adolescence and would then have what we call onset diabetes, meaning the body has reduced its ability to respond to insulin. This is usually done by inhibition or destruction of its own translation of the code to make glucose transporter 4 doorways in the cells. So, you know, when we say, well, we don't respond to insulin, it's not a gray area. We know pretty well at what level that's happening chemically. So it's at the transporter, glucose transporter 4, mainly on muscle and brain tissue. There's not enough of them there anymore. They're not made. And so insulin comes along, and insulin does not have the response that it should in a healthy person. So we're insulin insensitive. Well, why would that occur? Because it's been after years of bombardment with that poison, and the body is just trying to resist letting that poison come into the cells. So I'm going to go a third step, which some of you will recognize and some won't. If you live your whole life and you made it without type 2 diabetes, you may get type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's. So and there's plenty of medical literature about type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's. Most researchers have not figured out the exact link yet, but we figured it out in 2009, I believe, 8, somewhere in there, that you really are having inflammation of the brain, and the tangles, the beta tangles, the tau protein, the beta secretases, these are just symptoms. These are just waste products and an inability to process them out of the body. And it is an inflammatory response. And it takes a long time, someone's whole lifetime, to develop Alzheimer's. Why we're not getting Alzheimer's when we're 20 years old? Because this is a very long-term response to this chronic inflammation. So that's all about inflammation, and diabetes is a good example of that. Chronic inflammation, and you can move from type 1 to type 2 to type 3 diabetes. And you can take any other example of diseases. Look at asthma, and that's an inflammatory disease.
Right.
Psoriasis. What is psoriasis? Psoriasis is your body attacking its own cells. And it doesn't like its own skin. And it thinks that it recognizes your cells as being invaders. And when your body sends out the troops, so to speak, in the inflammatory pathway, they're going to eat something up. And if they can't find something to eat up, they eat themselves up. It's a classic case of tissue breakdown, autoimmune response. If you can take away the original inflammation, then you'll not have that long-term chronic response. And I want to remind you, even though you're physicians, sometimes we forget that inflammation is everywhere in your body, in every cell. So it's a general response, just like a hormone. There's not, when your body releases epinephrine out of the adrenal cortex, so we get these fight or flight that come out of the base of the brain, the hypothalamus or the adrenal cortex. And hormones go to every cell in your body, right down to your little toe, the furthest extremity, all the way to your heart. It's a chemical, and it gets in your blood, and it bathes your entire body. And those cells that are sensitive to that hormone then start reacting. Well, this is exactly what happens in inflammation. When your body sends out tumor necrosis factor alpha, it is in every cell, and every single cell of your body ends up being inflamed at least a low level. And the sites that actually have the insult, the cut, the wound, the poison, or whatever, that is where you will see the inflammation visually and feel the heat. You'll see it there. But still, the inflammation is occurring at a low level in every cell. All the entire lining of your cardiovascular system and all your muscles at your nerve synapses, all along the dendrites, throughout your brain, inflammation, and you just don't know it, again, because your body's accepted as normal. So when people take this product, when they ingest it, after just a couple of days, if not within a day, inflammation will be reduced. And you can tell it. You start your clarity of thought, first of all, as far as you thinking what's happening, clarity of thought. And that's because those synapses are being able to get across that, signals getting across the synapse. We have enough of glycoprotein to send across the synapse. You'll get better sleep then. And then also your vascular system will relax. You know, it's been constricted, it's been under attack, it will relax. In addition to these particular vitamins do relax your vessels naturally anyhow. Then your whole body improves. If you do have asthma, I actually used to have asthma, your body is much able to do two things. It will resist the attack if you're triggered by an environmental condition. Your body will not already be inflamed and ready to constrict those all of those microareoles in your lungs, and it'll be able to hold that off. You won't often get into asthma attacks as much as you do. The airways will not constrict. If you have hay fever, since you're no longer constantly inflamed, when that insult comes by, that pollen comes by, it won't immediately jump into acute inflammation, and your body will be much better to resist that. So any of those things that are caused by ultimately inflammation, psoriasis, asthma, disease, I used to have Crohn's disease. You know, I was a walking inflammatory case study. You know, I was stressed. This work is sometimes not very fun. And under the gun to, I just put out $2 million for a clinical. And it wasn't because of a university gave us money. It was our own money, investor money. We had a best guess. Put out a couple $1 million to have these studies conducted. And I was born with asthma, and I also developed Crohn's disease. I don't have any of those anymore, none. And so I'm my own guinea pig. Of course, that's just, you can't use me as a claim.
Right.
But now, after about 10,000 people, I believe we can use these as claims. So we have a couple of human studies. We're getting ready to do a third one, particularly with inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein and tumor necrosis factor alpha. It's going to be a relatively long-term study. We'll get some really good data out of that. But that's the inflammatory story here.
So, Dr.
We're under inflammation and we just don't realize it.
So, Dr. Ahrens, Amulin has transitioned to Amulin from Amulin M and C to now we have the new product Amulin E. You've added gallic acid. Could you touch a little bit on the benefit of having gallic acid in the Amulin E Plus now?
Yeah, well, C was our original formula, and they all have myricetin, quercetin, and chlorogenic acid. And I want to stress to these doctors that this is not some plant extract. You know, it says grape extract, coffee bean extract. Now we're dealing with these specific molecules, so they would be recognized as drugs if we went that route. They are specific molecules. We understand their binding sites, their enzymatic reactions, and exactly what they're doing. So it's not like drink some corn husk extract from Aztecs or something. This is specific molecules. We don't actually care where they come from. As physiologists, like vitamin C, you won't care if it comes from rose hips, areola, oranges, grapefruit. It's just vitamin C, and you want to make sure people have enough of it. Likewise, these are myricin, and we don't care if it comes from dark grapes or currants or wherever, as long as you get it, the pure myricin. Quercetin comes from, it's the most prevalent bioflavonoid on the planet, but it also is in very low amounts in your diet. It comes from everything. Apples, particularly we're currently getting it out of onion. And then chlorogenic acid, you can get that from green tea, green coffee. Also, you can get it out of honeysuckle leaves, honeysuckle flowers. We don't care where it comes from. So we have these 3 pure compounds, and we decided to increase the quercetin. And quercetin will help your energy levels. It liberates glucose from fat tissue. A lot of athletes use quercetin, and it helps you with your energy, the energy side. Liberates glucose from fat tissue. But we made the 2 together. C, which does not have much quercetin in it, because those people that were concerned about high blood sugar, we wanted to give them less quercetin because we didn't want glucose to be flooding out of their fat tissue and raising their blood sugar. They would think, well, this stuff is working backwards. So we left one with C. We called it C to control that type of condition, and then we made one M where we increased the quercetin quite a bit. And that would be for people who did not have blood sugar issues, but for everyone else. And that was named M for maintenance. And what we found out is that people were getting confused on which one they should take. Do I have high blood sugar? Don't I? What if I have inflammation? I have asthma and I have high blood sugar. So we moved to an E and did 2 things in this step. We found the balance point for the quercetin. We found the point where it does allow energy to be used and glucose to come out of fat tissue, but it doesn't flood it out like the original M did. So we found we've got the quercetin halfway between C and M, somewhere in there. So, and then the next thing we did is we added gallic acid, gallate, gallic acid. Gallic acid is a very primitive bioflavonoid, whereas myricin is more complicated and has more polyphenolic chains on it, rings. Gallic acid is just a single little phenolic ring with 3 hydroxyl units sticking out on it. And it can go places that big molecule, myricin and quercetin and chlorogenic acid can't. But it still has those 3 hydroxyl units on the end for the active site. You know, the best thing to do if you want to envision it, just go to Wikipedia and look at either one of those, myricin, quercetin, gallic acid, and they'll show you what they look like. And you'll see right away, there's the structure. And then on quercetin, on myricin, there's these 3 hydroxyls. On quercetin, it's an identical molecule, except it only has 2 hydroxyl units. And then gallic acid has 3. And so they have different effects, but they have the general overall same effects. But we found that quercetin, that gallic acid can get across the blood-brain barrier, and it's superb in reducing inflammation in the nervous system and in the dendrites. And it actually seems to repair the insulation, if you will, of nerve fibers. It appears to reduce seizures, and that's the misfiring across that synapse. Right. It seems to help with a myriad of neurological disorders, which are mostly due to nerve degradation or the loss of that myelin sheath And so we added this to it, and it's been a great. I'm glad we did. This has been a really good discovery. So we have the 3 original components in Emulin: myristotin, quercetin, chlorogenic acid, and then we've added the gallic acid. And you can get those from, also you can get them from black coffee, black tea. You can get them from oak leaves. It is the thing that makes brown rivers brown.
Right.
It's the tannin. The Native Americans have known for a long time that gallic acid, they didn't know what was happening, but they would strengthen them and give them better health throughout their life. So they always drank the brown river water as a tonic. But now we know it's gallic acid. So now that's what E is, and an E for everyone this time. Yeah, diabetic or not, any disease you have. There's only one instance of where I would say do not use Emulin, and that's radiation therapy, because Emulin will prevent radiation damage to your skin. Sunburn is actually the half of the problem with sunburn is an inflammatory response,
Right.
and to damage to your cells, and you produce hydrogen peroxide, and probably hydrogen peroxide is the world's leading oxidant. It chews up everything. It's a base, and it just you see it oxidize, bubble like heck, because it's really sucking in the oxygen and burning up tissue. So that's what causes the cell damage. And then the other part of it, actually, you can get cross-linked DNA and then have mutations. But the original damage is is inflammatory. And so you have DNA, you have Emulin that will migrate to your skin, and it will reduce effects of the radiation. And if you had that during you would have the less effective radiation. You would be fighting the treatment. So if you're doing radiation therapy, don't take it, make the radiation beneficial. It's unfortunately, we are throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You radiate an area, you do give them some chemical course. So chemical cells, the cancer cells are more susceptible to that radiation. So you give a chemical course, and the cancer cells become a great target. But as the radiation does bombard your entire body, and where you generally focus it, and the Emulin will protect your cells from that radiation, as well as it will protect the cancer cells, because they'll take out the.
So, Dr.
That's the only instance I know.
There's been a question regarding dosage. Let's say a patient with MS versus just low-grade inflammation. What is the dosage? Should the individual with MS take more of the Emulin, or is the dosage the same across the board?
We set the dose 750 milliliters upon our initial rat studies. There's a little equation that the FDA has promoted, which is called a human equivalent dose. It's just really based on mass, on your body weight. And then we also have the bioavailability compounds, because they are not readily bioavailable. And we looked at the average weight of a human, mass of a human. We came out with 750 milligrams would saturate most everyone, and anything more than that you would lose it through urine or through migration to the skin. And that's what the skin does. It dumps a lot of chemicals onto the outside layers if there's a lot of it. Vitamin C, carotenoids. It's the reason that you eat a lot of carrots. You actually can get an because the excess carotenoids migrate to your skin. Similarly, excess bioflavonoids, amylin to your skin. And then also it eliminates in the urine. The
Right.
half-life is around 4 days, by the way. So you don't have to worry about missing a dose. But those were averages. And if you notice what I had, that the excess migrates to your skin if you don't. Well, if you have any type of skin condition, you need to promote excess so it migrates to your skin, first of all. If you had psoriasis or some issue like that,
Right.
absolutely take an extra dose. And it'll migrate to your skin better in mitigating psoriasis and those types of issues. Now, as far as someone with any of those issues, it doesn't matter if it's multiple sclerosis or anything. I have not found out that anything helped greater, better than 50 as far as what Emlyn does. So I've never recommended above the 750 unless you are worried about your skin. You want a skin. I tell you, people, if you do double dose Emlyn and go out, you will not get sunburn as much. I challenge that to you. You know, don't cook yourself, but those that get sunburnt, another thing we found out by accident, we were just actually, my partner, who some of you have met from London, came over, and we just took a weekend on the boat. And he's very fair-skinned, and couldn't find out he didn't burn all. He got a little pink from the flushing of his capillaries, but he didn't get burnt. So we investigated that and found out, sure enough, Emlyn migrates to the skin. Okay, so now why would you ever change the dose? Because these three bioflavonoids, while they're all the same, there were a little bit of bioavailability differences between one person or another. And that's just normal, you know. Sugar tastes a little sweet to me, sweeter or less sweet than it does to some. Pepper, as some things are hot to people and not to other people. These are just bio compounds which have an effect on our nervous system. And likewise, maybe quercetin as an example. One person would not uptake quercetin as well as another. So if I found out somebody needed more quercetin, that's when I would increase the amount.
Right.
If you any time seems resistant, double the dose and then cut back. You cannot overdose, from what I just said. So don't worry about it. You cannot overdose. It is impossible. It's even less benign than C. So you cannot overdose. That's about it. If somebody needs more, give them a dose and then cut back to the least amount that is effective.
So does it matter, Dr. Ahrens, time of taking Emlyn before a meal, with a meal, after a meal? Is there any specific time that you feel is more effective?
There's a slight benefit to taking it with food. As far as the sugar management part of the carbohydrate management part of this, not from the inflammatory one, but from the carbohydrate management, because it will inhibit alpha amylase in your saliva in particular,
Okay.
and it will help with the glucose transporter 2s that are in your gut. It'll inhibit those if taken at the same time. But the effect is very slight because since the half-life is 4 days, you have a considerable amount of it in your body from one day to the next, from one night at dinner to the next breakfast. Even if you didn't take dinner, you still have considerable amount in your bloodstream lurking in your cells everywhere to work. Sugar did enter the body, but it is a slightly better if taken with foods. I myself take it whenever I remember. I'm terrible. So, my wife, she'll hand it to me whenever she can and I take 2 at a time.
Okay.
If I could remember better, I take 1 at breakfast and 1 at dinner. But I know if I say, okay, let me take 1 at breakfast, I probably won't take the second one in the evening. So if I see that bottle, I take the 2 at a time just because my memory's so poor. Now I'm working on a product for memory, but I can hardly remember to do my exercise. Okay, that's it. It's 2 anytime. 1 a day is good. Some people do take 1 a day. But I would take 2 a day. That's what we did all the work on. This is where we feel comfortable. This is across the board. But if someone seems resistant to an effect, give them more. It's not because they don't. Everyone does. It's just they might be a little resistant.
Questions from the group. Just unmute yourself and let's open up the channel here if you have any questions for Dr. Ahrens.
Yeah, Ron Borsma here in Michigan. One time I thought I heard that there was possible concern if someone was on the blood thinner. Wonder if that's accurate or not.
It depends on blood thinner. And so actually going in for surgery, there are some physicians who recommend that you avoid certain foods actually that can cause thinning, like onions and garlic. But the majority of blood thinners, there's no interaction. The problem is that quercetin can lead to some blood thinning, but it's almost not perceivable. We're talking about the detection in a test tube level where you've got to. It's not like you can draw it and see much of a change in the levels of anticoagulants, but there is a statistically significant amount, but not a physiologically active amount from the quercetin that is in Emulan. So I tell everyone, unless you're on the warfarin, which is a severe a poison, all the other blood thinners, we don't find any issue. I have to say, of course, that I am not anyone's physician, and they need to take the recommendation of their healthcare. But there is no physiologically difference in the effect on thinning of quercetin in the Emulan. It does exist in theory.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Michelle Venturo. Dr. Ahrens, my husband has high triglycerides, and I started him on the Emulan E. About how long will it take for it to be noticeable in his blood work? Because he has another. Pardon me?
For triglycerides.
Yeah, he has high blood sugars.
Yeah. So, if you get rid of the high blood sugar, the glycerides should drop also. Triglycerides, elevated triglycerides do not come directly from consuming too much. They all break down into glucose and then are rebuilt into fatty acids. And most triglycerides are there because of high blood sugar. So if you're checking your blood sugar every day, most people see a drop. Yet I have had a lady, it took her over 30 days. And I still, I don't know if it took her so long. I don't understand why. Well, that's why we do science. It took her a full 30 days. She was on Byetta, giving herself injections every morning, and her blood sugar did not start dropping until 30 days. In her case, her gluconeogenesis enzymes were just tremendously overworking, so that she would try to reduce sugar and use amylin, but yet the enzyme that produces new sugar in your body, I think she must have had a couple of genetic copies of that enzyme, so she was making a lot of it, and that took over 30 days. So the answer about triglycerides and a drop, triglycerides themselves could take 30 to 60 days. Sugar itself could take a week to a month. Sugar, a week to 30 days. Triglycerides, because they are a further step past sugar, their secondary system, it could take 30 to 60 days.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
So I hope these physicians get the story that this really is a vitamin. The only thing that changed is the law that you can no longer say things are vitamins. But I'm telling you, this is a vitamin. Everyone needs it. Everyone doesn't know they don't need it. Who needs vitamin C, D, E, K, name them, those vitamins?
Right.
Everyone. Who needs amylin? Everyone. Babies. It doesn't matter. So I hope that all of you, I know you have interest because of this forum this morning, but I encourage you to read these testimonials, because you have to have the proof. We don't want any empirical evidence here to back up things like patents, but the empirical work is what you see in your patients. You ask them, have you gotten better, right? So it's amazing, the people that have had Crohn's stop. Once you knock down that inflammation, your body is able to repair itself. That's the only thing we're doing. But the body can't do anything. Just think about if I was standing next to you and just constantly slapping your face, just lightly slapping your face every couple of seconds, and it would be irritating to you. But eventually, you couldn't function. You couldn't think. You'd be so annoyed. You would just be damaged eventually just by the light slap, and you couldn't. Eventually, it would worry you to death. And that is what's going on in your body. Constant inflammation. Your body just eventually gives out. A disease condition results. Get rid of that chronic inflammation. Your patients will rejuvenate themselves.
You just touched on something, Dr. Ahrens. As we reduce the inflammation, we're reducing the effects of aging with amylin.
Yes, that's aging has several issues, but I believe that the primary one, I'd go so far as to say 60% of age-related issues are inflammatory related. It's inflammation, constantly under attack. Your body loses its ability to rejuvenate itself. We have not looked all the way down into, for instance, a transcription and translation to see what's going on in the DNA, RNA level, the genes. We do know that we have a translation and transcription as far as glucose transporters are concerned. But as far as, all those myriad chemicals, a generic effect of inflammation on transcription and translation, your body's ability to make new cells, exact copies of the previous cell, in aging, that we lose that.
Right.
In some things like, most people are worried about arthritis. That's absolutely an inflammatory issue. That is not something like with your skin. A lot of people are concerned about their skin, the health, the flexibility. The skin is elastin, elastin. It's an enzyme that basically is responsible for your skin having that texture that we all want, and we lose that over the years, the ability to make that chemical. And we do see that if you reduce inflammation, we get a recovery in elastin. And we're not going to make some beauty products. Don't worry about that. But man,
I have one more quick question. I was reading the information on Climax and how it can help mitigate the side effects of chemotherapy.
Yeah.
Can Emulin help? Because you mentioned about radiology, so I was curious about chemotherapy.
Absolutely, chemotherapy. That's for sure. And we actually aren't doing a joint promotion of these products for physiological reasons. We're focused on them separately, but I imagine that in the next year or so, we'll do some further studies with Climax and Emulin at the same time, because it's very interesting. Climax causes the production and differentiation of stem cells. That's what's going on underneath it. And we know that happens with Emulin also, but through a different route. Mm-hmm. We had type 1 diabetics, rats, the first study, the second study, they were type 1 diabetics. They had no functioning pancreas, and we gave them Emulin, and they started making insulin. That's the only way that could happen, is they regenerated beta cells. So this is an exciting link to Climax, and we might have a synergistic effect that just is amazing. We're going to find that out. So I will say yes. Absolutely. If you're in a chemotherapy, take them both. I mean, good night. Another 80, whatever the price is. I don't know actually in what country, whatever the price is, but whatever that costs, a small price to pay to take them together. Don't take one or the other. Yes, Emlyn will help with chemotherapy. Absolutely will. But not with radiation. Remember that one. Not radiation. Yes, with chemo.
Have you found physicians in the chemotherapy area resistant to adding this into patients' regimens?
Well, and I've just in general felt resistance to Emulin. My own physician refuses it. I happen to know he's a good physician, and he thinks, and I've opened back the little corner of his mind where he's starting to think about it because he's seen me. And, I travel a lot, at least 50% of the time, and I don't eat properly, and I forget to take my Emulin. And I actually became pre-diabetic last year in the middle of a travel regime where I had not taken Emulin for a couple of months. I mean, I couldn't think. I was too tired, going from hotel to hotel, eating all that food, I mean, there's not a selection. And then people would invite me out, and they're going to have pasta and all these things. And I just got so off track, Ahrens. And my blood sugar started creeping up, and my triglycerides and cholesterol got into the 300s, if you can believe it. And he wanted to throw me on drugs. And I said, no, this is just a temporary thing. I've been a bad boy. I recognize it. I know exactly what's going on. Shame on me. And so I said, give me 3 months. And so I took Emulin and got a sensible diet and was right back down where I should be, 100, 5 cholesterol, triglycerides the same way, and got my weight back down, and blood sugar
Wow.
back to 85 in the morning. And he's shocked, but he still won't accept it. But he's slowly coming around. So I have problems with MDs being resistant to not listening to drug companies. And they want to sell insulin, and they want to sell Byetta,
Right.
and all these drugs, because that's what they've been trained to do. I don't actually blame the physician. You go through medical school, and then after that you need help. You rely on pharmaceutical companies to supply that information, and you want to process it in the least time and problems as possible. And there you are, looking at symptoms, putting the picture together, trying to figure out what's wrong, and you looking for any piece of information you can. And you do go on a scientific journal, you can go on PubMed, but even for me, these things are extremely highly technical articles that even MDs and other healthcare professionals can't recognize. You know, no one expects you to know what is the 12th enzyme related in the isoleucine pathway.
Right.
And so you're looking for interpretation. I know exactly how that is, so I don't blame them. But what I just want them to do is listen to my proof and legitimate patents, double-blind studies at major institutions, and then thousands of testimonials, and say, just try it. That's all you need to do. And everyone that's tried it has never gone back. But yeah, my own physician is most resistant.
So Dr. Ahrens, we're getting close to an hour here, but there's been a lot of studies, a lot of docs, a lot of clinics are looking at genetics, epigenetics, and the low-grade inflammation and how the inflammation affects the genetic expression. And there's been a lot of tests you can run to determine the whole epigenetic issues, looking at what amylin can do and is doing with low-grade inflammation. It can affect genetic expression too.
Well, that's how the diseases develop. You know, everything is genetics. We say, are you genetically predisposed to so and so? Well, you are or aren't, but even the regular chemical suite in your whole body is all genetics. So it's machinery that's producing proteins, and proteins are behind every single action in your body. Even your thinking is protein mediated. And I haven't had enough time, and probably I won't the rest of my life have enough time to get into this particular area. But I believe when we say that amylin is inhibiting this or stimulating something else, most of that is right down on the genetic level, and we are dealing with the transcription and translation of proteins, where amylin, when we say it restores a function, it actually is restoring the genetic translation to where it should have been. And so without it, we get to disease. With it, we are preventing problems in translation and transcription. Hope that was a good enough answer.
That was great. Yes. Any other questions? Dr. Gluckman, you're always good for a few questions. Anyone else? Any final thoughts, Dr. Ahrens, on
Well, you can't overdose. You cannot overdose. So give it to your patients. You'll see improvement. Simple as that.
Great.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, this is Joan from New York, and thanks so much for everything that you're telling us. Wonderful. I would like to find out if you're type 1 or type 2 diabetic, which of the amylin you take? Emmeline E or C, or which one?
I take Emmeline E. That Emmeline E has the right amount of quercetin for everyone. So it does not have as much as M, and it's got a little bit more than C. And it will not harm any type 1 or 2 diabetic. And also, the way I understand is Igalian is going to discontinue the M and C, and there's only going to be E available.
Right.
But I strongly recommend vitamin E for everyone, diabetic, type 1 or type 2.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know someone that is on dialysis, and he has a low protein. Every time he goes for dialysis, he's on a peritoneal dialysis, and they say that his protein is low. Would this help him?
Yes, it would help him. Absolutely would help him. And it will help at the cellular level and on the exact problem. But I want to remind you what I just said. Everyone needs Emmeline. It doesn't matter if you're on dialysis or if you've got type 1 diabetes, type 2, if you're just old like me, or if you can't think clear anymore, or you have asthma, or you want to lose weight, or you're an athlete, or you're a baby, or you or someone in the middle. Everyone needs Emmeline, so it really doesn't matter on one level what condition you have. Everyone will see improvement.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Great. Anything else? Anyone else? Dr.
I don't know. Look, we've got to hurry up and go because it's been 5 minutes over an hour, and I triple my charge after an hour. My rate goes up threefold.
Okay, great. We appreciate you so much, your time. Just wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Ahrens.
You're welcome. Welcome. I hope that was a good enough explanation of inflammation, and I'll see you next time. We'll have something different to talk about.
We will. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Perfect.